Hey there, welcome back to the Application Insider channel. Today I've got another student interview for you. And can I just say that I love how these student interviews have turned out so far. This is only the third one, but they have all been phenomenal. And I know that all the rest that are coming after this will also be just as amazing. These students who have gone through the application process and are sharing their perspective with you, what worked, what didn't work, things they used, the timelines they followed, their checklist or technique to going through the application, all of it has been so unique to each person. But I know that as you hear what they have done and what worked for them, you are likely to find a technique that might work for you as well and just be a good fit for you moving forward. So I'm so excited to be talking with these students and having them share with you. Today, I'm talking to Krista Semonelle. She went through the spring 2021 match and she matched to her first choice. And as we got chatting, the only application insider resources she used were the free ones. You guys, I put these free things together because I want you to be able to find resources that you can use on your application, no matter what is in your wallet. So Krista is a great example of how these free resources can be absolutely maximized and how you can use them on your application and maybe, like her, match to your top program. So let's hear from Krista about her application experience. All right, I want to welcome Krista Semonelle to the Application Insider podcast and YouTube channel. Krista, I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Yes, I'm very excited. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Okay, if you can just start off with a short introduction of yourself, tell us if you'd like where you're from and where you are in your dietetics pathway.
Sure. So as you mentioned, my name's Krista. I was born and raised in Delaware, Newark, Delaware, which is a state that borders New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Maryland. And I attended Westchester University in Westchester, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour drive away from where I lived. And I graduated in the fall of 2020. And in August 2021, I will begin my dietetic internship at Geisinger Medical Center. They have a clinical concentration. That was my top choice. And yeah, I'm very excited to start this next chapter of this very long journey that we're in.
Yes, I'm so excited that you're willing to share your whole process and help other dietetic students. And I should have started off with congratulations on getting matched to your first choice.
Thank you
That's
so much.
obviously what we want to talk about. We will get into that, but congratulations for matching there. That's awesome.
Thank you.
All right. How did you choose to focus on dietetics and select that as your major and the career that you're moving into?
So I am actually was a non-traditional student. I decided to go back to college at the age of 26. I had attended college right out of high school, like most students, but after a year, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought maybe nursing. I knew it was something medical, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was that I was passionate about. So I began working for a large hospital corporation in Delaware at the age of 18, which I actually still work at now. I just celebrated my 15-year anniversary. And that having jobs at that hospital inadvertently introduced me to dietetics. I'm also a runner, more like a jogger, but I'm going to call myself a runner. And I started that at age 24. So that coupled with the job that I had at the time literally made me search nutrition, hospital, career. And I found dietetics through that. But it ended up being a great choice for me. It's perfect fit for everything that I've always been interested in, and it just kind of encapsulates puts it all together, and allows me to use all of the skills that I've acquired over the years. And also, I get to learn new things about something that I'm really passionate about. At the time that I decided to go back to school, I worked for a emergency medicine residency office. So I worked with a lot of medical students and medical residents that were around the same age as I was. But they had done so much more than I had at that time. Not necessarily in a bad way, but they just traveled more. They were very well versed. They were very confident in themselves and were really looking forward to becoming physicians in the future. They had worked so hard for this. And I was a little bit jealous of not only how far they had come, but the confidence that they had and where they were going.
Mm.
Um, so in just talking to them, and then again, my new passion of running, just really made me start thinking about what it is I wanted to do and where I wanted to be long term. So I made the choice to apply to Westchester shortly after that Google search. And when I found out that I got the job, I walked in my boss's office the next day and gave my 2 weeks notice. I was working full time, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. So that job was not going to be sustainable as a full time student. So I began working part time overnight in an emergency department. So my first year at Westchester was really difficult to um, take on being a full time student, a part time employee, and just shifting everything that I had known over the past 10 or so years and making it fit this new lifestyle. So after about a year, I decided to take a break from school just so that I could take a step back, figure out what it was that I need to do in order to be successful on this whole journey. And during that time is actually when I began to, looking into dietetic internships. And then that I think was one of the best moves that I made because it kind of set the precedent for the next 3 years for me. That is actually when I found Geisinger and the two other programs that I had applied to. They had always remained the same. There were a few others that I kind of flirted with the idea of applying to, and I went to some other open houses, but looking into schools that early kind of gave me a visual mindset of this is what I need to do in order to get into an internship. This is how I should be spending my free time. These are areas that I need to continue to work on. And it also made me see what my best qualifications were and just kind of hone in on who I was and then apply to the programs that were best going to support that rather than changing myself in order to fit them, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it sounds like, I mean, this has been a long game for you. You've had the long-term vision in mind for a while now. And I really like what you said about just, starting to see that whole process from a few years before you might even be into it, of realizing this is the internship process. That's what comes next after this school step, which you were kind of already making as a second move, having, quit your job to go back to school. But having that mindset of, I'm learning this is what it's going to take. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe recommitting, like, yep, this is for me. This is what I want to do. Is that kind of how it felt like?
You're exactly right. I had made so many changes to get just a year in to that point. So it was definitely a make it break it moment. I either had to fully commit and move forward and do whatever it took to make this happen, or I needed to kind of backtrack and figure out, is this for me? Should I be doing something else? Should I be working full time again? So to be completely honest, probably won't come as a shocker considering I found this through Google, but I didn't know all that went into applying for the internship and ultimately becoming a dietitian.
Yeah.
So luckily there was one specific course in Westchester's DPD program that introduced how to prepare, what was necessary in order to get an internship. And I sat in that class like, oh my gosh, I haven't done any of this. I didn't expect any of it, the money, everything. So yes, that year definitely made me realize that this is what I wanted and I had to do whatever it took in order to follow through with it.
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad you did, though, and that you could continue moving forward with confidence. And starting with the Google search, I love that. Like, what do I want to do with my life? Maybe Google could help me figure it out. I love how it came together for you.
It was a little
Um,
challenging to explain that in my personal statement, but I made it work.
it's perfect. I love it. All right. Well, speaking of the application experience, two internships that you learned of in that class, let's talk a little bit about that. So we already know that you matched to your top choice, which again is awesome. Um, let's talk a little bit about kind of one of the first things I encourage students to do is think, what programs do they want to apply to? You already talked about thinking along the lines of skill sets and qualities that you possessed and how that would fit into the programs you were looking into. So how did you decide and, ultimately narrow down which programs you did submit an application to?
So given my extensive experience in a hospital, I knew that I was most interested in clinical.
Mhm.
I really like acute care, especially working in an emergency department. It introduced me to what that actually means. And I'm really looking forward to being able to see what goes on after patients leave the emergency department
Yeah.
and are in an inpatient setting. So that was definitely top on my list. I did apply to another program that had a community concentration just because I didn't want to limit myself. And I was interested in the program. Uh, I just got a really good feeling about them when I attended the open house. So I was definitely open to any type of program that, again, fit me. I didn't want to be uncomfortable for a year. I didn't want to think that I made the wrong choice. So I know that you say it all the time, but picking the program that you feel is a good fit for you, I think is one of the most important things. And I'm definitely glad that I did that rather than what would be easiest for me, most convenient, most cost effective. I'm looking forward to going outside of my comfort zone and just really challenging myself during this next step and learning everything that I can.
Mhm. Awesome. It's good that your comfort zone will be challenged and you will be stepping out of it. It's just good to have that mindset going in.
Yeah.
All right. When it comes to your actual application, how did you go about working on it? Did you have timelines in place? What was your process for kind of tackling that entire thing?
So um, I had a great plan. It did not go
Oh no.
according to plan at all. But initially, I had, again, as you suggested, set kind of a fake due date for myself. And it was 2 weeks ahead of the deadline. I missed that. And then I did it 1 week later, missed that. And sure enough, I was going all the way up until the deadline. I think I turned it in about 4 hours beforehand.
Yay.
Um, I'm definitely a procrastinator at heart, and my time management skills, I have good intentions, but not the best follow through on that. So about 3 years before I applied, one of the things that I started doing was keeping a notebook. This notebook, I still have it today, is full of so many things. So anytime that I was feeling motivated, I would write something that I could possibly include in my personal statement. Sometimes that was just a sentence, maybe a paragraph. Sometimes I would write 2 or 3 pages. Um, while I didn't actually use any of that word for word, it definitely gave me some place to start when I did go to write my actual personal statement.
Mhm.
I would also write dates and dates of volunteering or symposiums that I had attended. I kept brochures of some of the conferences that I attended. So it was just kind of a guide for me. There were things in there that I hadn't even remembered. Like I volunteered for Ronald McDonald House and I did a class with them. Had no recollection of that. So it was good that I kept this just because at the very least it saved me time in the long run. So I would definitely recommend doing that, especially for someone like myself, who, again, I have, well, now at this point, 15 years of hospital experience. I attended a lot of conferences at work.
Yeah.
Um, so that was one thing. As far as actually sitting down and attempting to tackle DICAS, I started in January. I graduated in December 2020, and then I started in January. And I started with the easy things, directly inputting things into DICAS, and then I spent the rest of my time on my personal statement. One of the things that we all know is that the personal statement is by far the most difficult to tackle. I had always been pretty good at writing a paper in, a day. Again, time management, procrastination. And I thought that the personal statement would actually be easy because I'm like, it's about me. It's what I want to write about. As long as I'm answering these questions, I'll be fine. Guys, start early. So important. I My significant other read the first draft, and he was like, you should have started a while ago. I appreciate the honesty. I needed it. But yeah, so about 3 months, and actually with the help of that notebook, the diecast things didn't even take me maybe 16 hours in total.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when you look at the DICAS application as a whole, a lot of it is tedious. Just be like, you have to type in your managers and your places of employment and the dates and the hours. And like you said, sometimes like you don't remember everything. So that notebook is a genius idea. Suggestion to everyone right now, start your own notebook. And then, yeah, I've talked with lots of students who, when we chat about the personal statement, it's a reminder that this is a different style of writing. You've written lots of papers and you've done lots of research, and all of those papers are probably longer than 1,000 words, but this is a different style of writing. So it sounds like that manifested itself as very true.
Yeah. The easiest part for me was obviously getting everything out and then just kind of cutting things out from there. The big thing that I had to keep in mind is, will other people find this valuable or important or interesting? There was a lot of stuff that I wanted to talk about, and then when I had it proofread by others, they were like, we don't care about this. It's not, it's either in your resume or it's not going to be imperative when you're in the internship. So is it, think about what it is that you're trying to get across, what point, and then just put the supporting stuff in there. Mm-hmm. Mine at first was almost 4 pages.
So. Oh, wow.
Not good. Single space.
Yeah. Well, something that I suggest that people do with the personal statement is sometimes it is easier to just get everything down on the page, then you know everything you have to work with. And that includes what I call like the heartstrings. I mean, it's a personal statement, so there's going to be some personal elements to it, obviously. And then when you go through the editing, you realize, these are some extra details that are important to me, but they're not coming off as very important when someone's reading it. And sometimes that does mean cutting out the heartstrings elements. And it's like, you only got 1,000 words. You're going to have to simplify this part of the story because what you really want to share is this other part. And I have told people before, cutting out the heartstrings doesn't mean it's not important. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. It doesn't mean it has less meaning for you now. It just means your personal statement needs to address, or spend more time on other things. But I know that can be really hard, cutting out those parts.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. When you started working on your application, or just as you started considering what it would take to get into an internship, are there any areas that you had specific concerns about that you had to get more information about, or just make sure that you knew how to address as you moved forward?
For the actual application portion, let me just think about this for a second. So you hear from a lot of people that transcripts take the longest time. I'm sure that other people that did this last match would agree that I don't think that takes that much time. Definitely request them early. That way it's one less thing to worry about. I think the biggest thing that helped me is that I also requested a copy for myself. That way, when you go in and put all of your stuff into DICAS, you know exactly how to write it out. For example, one of the classes that I took had the word health in it, but health was spelled incorrectly. The E or the A was missing or something. And I felt silly putting it in that way, but per DICAS instructions, write it exactly how it is on the transcript. So that was extremely helpful. And I think that, I forget what the question is. Sorry.
Just were there any concerns that you had that you had to either get information from programs or just be conscious of as you were working on your application?
Okay, sorry. Let me put that part out. So concerns, I think just like remaining confident, knowing that I was leaving myself enough time, and just really trying not to procrastinate. It's so overwhelming, especially hearing all of the buildup ahead of time, that I would open DICAS, I would kind of look at it, I would read the directions, go to a different tab, do the same thing. I spent a lot of time just like dreading it. And so finally, as the deadline approached, I started to get my butt in gear. And even if I just did 5 minutes, one day, I'm not lying, I put one single class in for the transcript and I was like, all right, I'm done for the day. So I think just kind of getting over that hump and setting time aside to dedicate to it is very important. And I luckily had already graduated by the time I did it. Shout out to the students that are doing it while you're in your last semester. I honestly do not know how you're doing it. Keep on keeping on. But that was very difficult in itself. So I'm glad that I had that portion. And also money, figuring out how much is necessary to apply to each of these programs is very important. I had an idea in my head, and then just about 2 or 3 days before I submitted everything, I went back and it was actually more than I thought it was going to be, just by a little bit. But knowing that, again, I'm non-traditional, so having to have that money myself was obviously very important in order to turn everything in on time.
Yeah, doing that research. I mean, I hate to say it's a pay to play sort of situation, but it kind of is. But so knowing ahead of time what are the dollar signs for DICAS, for D&D Digital, for programs, for transcripts, all of that, knowing that ahead of time is really nice instead of just being like, I guess I'm just shelling out the money as it comes up. So I'm glad you had that forethought to do that research. All right. So as you were working on your application, what resources did you find helpful that gave you insights or just helped you work through each section?
Nicole, I am not kidding when I say I took advantage of every single free resource that you offered.
That's why they're there.
I first found the podcast, and from there, I started following you on Instagram, and I would visit Application Insider during crunch time, like almost every day. Your application checklist was like, it went in my notebook and I looked at that every day. It just, at the very least, Application Insider helped to give me the confidence to just kind of go through this. Like, so thousands of other students have done it. It was just nice to have, so I knew I was capable, but it was just nice to have someone that was kind of on my team, like supporting me. Again, as a non-traditional student, I didn't really have peers in my classes that I spoke to, unless it was work or school related. And while I could have gone to any professors, I lived an hour away from campus. So Zoom was not as popular as has become in the past year, but commuting to campus just to talk about DICAS wasn't worth it for me. I would rather just get on the internet, do a few searches, and you answered questions that I didn't even realize that I had. I can't think of anything specific, but like the podcast, I remember listening to it one day and I was like, oh, that's a really good point. Like I hadn't even thought about it. I think you were talking about how to put things into DICAS and what to include in there versus on your resume. It was something along those lines. So you were by far the biggest resource for me. Additionally, just like looking at Reddit, some of that stuff was a little bit outdated, but just doing a simple question again into my friend Google would give me some Reddit feedback. So I know that I could have looked at relied more on my DPD program, but um, I don't think at the time in my early years they provided too many resources, so I just kind of shied away. I think that they have a lot more available now,
Mhm,
but I don't want to say that they weren't helpful, but I just didn't take advantage of what they had to offer.
mhm.
Um, so yeah, you by far.
Well, I'm glad. And like when I say that's why the free stuff is there, it's literally why the free stuff is there. So I'm glad you used all of it. Um, Forgive me for my memory. Did you and I have a brainstorm call as well?
We did. I scheduled that probably about a month before the deadline. So that is part of the reason why I made my initial deadline 2 weeks ahead of
Mhm,
time. I made the brainstorm call with you more towards the end so that I could kind of go through everything and be almost finished and then ask any last minute questions that I had, which was worked out very well for me. You cleared up some questions that I had about DICAS in general. And then also I just asked you some resume questions. And if nothing else, it was helpful to see how you sent our interview to me through email afterward. And it was really nice to see how I looked on Zoom
mhm.
communicating with someone. I use my hands a lot. So once it came time for interviews, that was also very helpful to have, like just paying attention to what I did in the video with you versus how I want to portray myself during interviews.
Awesome. That's a bonus element of the brainstorm call. So to everyone who's listening, the checklist, I'll have a link in the show notes and the caption. You can schedule the brainstorm call with me is free. So Krista matched to her first choice with free resources from Application Insider and of course the work she put into her application. So I just want to let people know that is possible and free resources are definitely available. Use them. I'm not creating them just for fun. So take
Yes, take
advantage.
advantage of all of them. And honestly, in hindsight, I wish that I would have gotten the personal statement workbook. It was something that I had considered, but by the time I thought seriously about it, it was, you know, the deadline was like 2 weeks away. But I wish I would have done that because at the very least, it sounds like it would have given me some guidance to just kind of lead me down the right path so that I wouldn't have to have spent so much time just doing the wrong thing.
Mhm. Is that, are you referring to the sample pack? It's just a download thing? Let me explain what I'm talking about. So I've got a sample pack where you can download like examples of personal statements that have
Yeah,
been completed. Okay, yeah.
yeah.
So I'll put a link to that in the show notes. So the sample pack, like you said, it does provide guidance. A big thing with the personal statement is there's the question, and then there's making sure you include in your response the unasked parts of the question that directors are going to hope to see. So the sample pack does give you examples of what those unasked portions are. And then, like I said, 2 submission ready personal statements that you can use as references. You cannot submit them yourself. I wrote them myself. So don't plagiarize. That's bad. But you can see like one of them answers the questions in order, one of them answers them in a different order. So you can see how that works. But yeah, that can be a good resource. But it sounds like you wrote a great personal statement even without it. So that's awesome. All right. Thinking back on your application experience, if you could if you had to do it again, would you do anything differently and what would that be?
I would have made my friends and family more aware of what it is that I was working on. They knew what it was, but they didn't know to the extent or how much time it would take. Um, so I think that so if they would ask me to hang out or ask me if I could do something in the beginning, more towards January, February, I was like, well, I have this thing that I should be working on. And I think that if they knew how overwhelming it could be, maybe they would have been, you know, maybe they wouldn't have asked me to do certain things. So like I had a dog sit, which isn't a huge deal, but not having a dog myself, it did take time away from that. I think also just tackling it gradually. If it was easier for me as the deadline approached to kind of look at each section one by one. And like I said, even if I was just sitting down and doing one thing that day, at least I was progressing on it. The very first day that I sat down, I was like, oh yeah, this will take me this long, this will take me this long. No, everything took a lot longer than I had thought, even with my handy notebook with all of my dates. So yeah, just take it kind of one step at a time. And I really did celebrate those little wins. I had a glass of wine afterwards because I deserved it.
Oh,
Um,
definitely.
I mentioned the making of a fake deadline, even if I personally didn't stick to it. It was helpful to, at least in the beginning, to have that, because I really do think that I got a lot more done than I would have by that point. So I recommend that and maybe stick to it.
Well, I mean, that's the whole purpose of the fake deadline, is that if you miss it, you're still okay.
Right. So make the fake deadline, but don't consistently remind yourself it's fake.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
And then staying organized. By the end of it, I hadn't realized that I would have so many papers. So like the transcripts, notes, things that I had printed out, my checklist. So just staying organized. I ended up having to like paperclip a whole bunch of things. And then as the deadline did get closer, I was like frantically going through papers. So I think that a lot of us uh, DBD students are very organized. So just hone in on that and use those skills. So yeah, I think those are the big ones.
Awesome. All right. I want to hear a little bit about your internship, even if you, I mean, you haven't started yet, have you? When do you start your internship? That's what I actually want to know.
August 16th.
Awesome.
I am counting down. So I'm so excited.
I'll bet.
It's a so it's located in Danville, Pennsylvania. That's about 3 hours away from my home in Delaware. So I've officially already moved up here. My significant other is also at that same hospital, so that worked out as far as like getting a place to rent and things like that. Since I found this internship 3 years ago, I so because it has a clinical concentration, I obviously know that it's going to be very hospital heavy. Luckily, I am comfortable in that setting. I hear from a lot of other students that's, at least when I was attending the open house, that that was something that they were nervous about.
Mhm.
Um, Not necessarily as a dietetic intern, but just as a person who's worked in a hospital in my early 20s. Just have confidence in yourself. I don't talk to physicians any differently than I talk to nurses, than I talk to environmental services who clean the rooms. Just have confidence in yourself, what you're asking for, what you're saying, and other fake it till you make it. So I'm looking forward to continuing to be in a hospital, but having a different role. Right now, I'm clerical, so I do have patient contact. I'm very comfortable with patients, but I am very much looking forward to actually having a say in their their care plan.
Mhm.
I can't
Yeah.
say I can't wait enough. um, but they only accept 5 people and then 1 pediatric. So
Mhm.
I hope that that means that I get one-on-one precepting, which they've already said that we get. So I'm looking forward to that, as well as getting both inpatient and outpatient. Geisinger has a lot of um, buildings, for lack of better words, a lot of locations throughout the area. So we'll get experience at a few of those.
Nice. Awesome. And you had mentioned when you were going to open houses that you were kind of just getting a feel for how the program would be. I know this is going back a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about that? What it felt like to go to the open houses? And again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but use your gut or your intuition or whatever you want to call it.
Yes, absolutely. I can't recommend that enough either. So there is an internship that's fairly close to where my mom lives. That they accept, I think, over 20 people.
Mm.
I'm not saying it would be easy to get in there, but my chances were definitely higher. The cost, it was more cost effective considering I could have stayed at my mom's house. And I also could have gotten my master's at the same time, so I could have gotten student loans. So on paper, this program looked like it could have been a good fit for me. However, when I attended the open house, I from the very moment that I signed in, someone had said something, and I was like, "Oh, I didn't like that." And then I sat down and just it, my gut feeling, it just wasn't for me. I attended in total because I started attending open houses in 2019, which
Oh,
again, it can't hurt to do that. Also, when I applied with Geisinger, I made it a point to say that I had been to 2 of their open houses because they made
nice.
a comment about me not being able to see the campus. And I was like, no, I came last year. I was able to see it. So whether or not that made me look good, I don't know, but it definitely can't hurt.
Mhm.
So all in all, I think I attended 6 open houses, and there were 2 that I had intentions of applying to programs. And after attending the open house, it was like I really didn't feel like that was a good fit for me personally.
Mhm.
Um, on the other hand, there was an open house that I wasn't as excited about going into, and they're one of the programs that I actually ended up applying to just because
Wow.
they were so, it seemed like they really cared about their interns. They were excited to have all of the students there for open house. Just like the feeling that I got, it was almost like that woman was like a family member of mine. She
Oh,
was just
wow.
so personable. I got such a good feeling that I ended up ranking them number 2.
Wow. Awesome. So that is why we attend open houses, not just to get information, but to really get a feel for the program. So thank you for expanding on that. I think that's really helpful. Okay, you've already shared some really great suggestions and recommendations, but I'm wondering if you can maybe wrap things up or if you got another one saved for an action item for our listeners. I like to give everyone something they could potentially walk away with and do right now after listening to this episode. So, what action item would you share to a dietetic student?
Start now, stay confident, stay organized, and know your worth. Don't apply to a program because they might accept you. Apply to a program because that's where you want to be. And starting early, starting now will give you that leg up when you do go to apply because you'll know that you're checking all of those boxes. If there's something on that program's list that you haven't done yet and you start early, you have time to to plan that so that you do check that box. And again, just staying confident is a huge thing. If you don't have confidence in yourself, it's going to be hard to get other people to buy into you. So just you're your biggest cheerleader. So, and also stay organized because that's a big thing. And don't procrastinate. Lots of action tips. Sorry. Do it all though.
I love it. I love it. It's so wonderful. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and everything that you learned through this process. I know that other students will find it helpful as well. Before I forget, is there a way that people can connect with you on social media or elsewhere?
Yes, I'm not very active, but if you have any questions or want to reach out, please feel free. It's at Krista Semonelle.
Okay, awesome. And I will have a direct link to that on Instagram to Krista's account, so you can reach out to her if you would like. But otherwise, Krista, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me. Good luck, everyone. That's awesome, especially because I've told you before that I initially found you through the podcast.
Mhm.
And so this will just, that'll be really good to adding to, because like a lot of what I'm going to say is just supporting the episodes I've listened to. I've
Mhm.
listened to some of your episodes like 3 times because they really are
Oh, wow.
helpful. Also, I'm a little bit obsessive, but yeah, so I think it will be a really good resource,
Okay.
especially for people like me who don't have anyone else to ask questions to. So
Yeah. Well, and like literally, that's the whole purpose that I started Application Insider. I was just like, some programs prepare people better than others for this whole internship process. Some people are, for whatever reason, they're not applying while they are in their DPD or right after they graduated. They've been removed for some reason. This is not an like simple throw it together type of application. There's going to be questions why are there questions?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
good. I'm glad you found everything you've listened to or read helpful so far.
Absolutely. All of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Krista for sharing her experience. I know that there are many people who come to dietetics from other careers or are non-traditional students themselves. So hopefully hearing from Krista has given you some ideas that you can apply to your own application experience as you move forward towards your dietetics goals. Krista shared so many great suggestions, whether it's breaking DICAS down into little chunks, even as small as 5 minutes a day, or giving yourself a fake deadline so that if you miss it, you're not out anything and you can still meet the real one. Or if it's going to those open houses to learn about programs, but also to get a gut feeling and do like your own gut check about whether or not that program might be a good fit for you. She said that that helped her decide not to apply to some programs she was thinking she would, but also on the flip side, to apply to a program she didn't originally plan on applying to. So you never know what will happen when you go see what programs have to offer and take that intuition check about whether or not it'll be the right place for you. So Krista also shared a number of resources that she used from Application Insider. Again, the free stuff, it's down below in the caption. So there's a link to the Ultimate DICAS checklist, which will help you keep track of everything you need through the entire application. There's a link to schedule a free 20-minute brainstorm call with me, which you can do at the beginning of your application experience to make sure you get started on the right foot, or like Krista did towards the end, just to make sure you are checking all the boxes and have everything ready for your submission. The podcast and the YouTube channel, of course, listen, re-listen, take notes, whatever it is that feels like a good fit for you. My Instagram is at Application Insider. I'm sharing tips and tricks there. We also talked for a minute about the personal statement sample pack. This is not a free option, but is a really great tool if you want to see what a personal statement looks like. I've got links to all of those things down below. You can also follow Krista on Instagram. I've got her handle and my handle down there so you can keep track of both of us and connect with whatever questions that you've got for your own process. Krista shared so many wonderful insights. I hope you found something useful that you can apply to your own application experience. Thank you, Krista, for your time and your perspective. And with this insider insight, your application is sure to stand out.